The flight attendant took off her high heels and stirred the passengers' coffee with them. Then, she put the shoes back on and calmly carried the coffee to the passenger's seat. However, the passenger seemed to have already guessed Annie's intention and deliberately knocked the coffee over onto the floor. Unfortunately, some of the coffee spilled onto Annie's hand. Annie didn't dare to show any displeasure because this passenger was none other than the Princess of Thailand. She had booked the entire plane for herself and specifically demanded that Annie serve her. After spilling the coffee, the princess noticed Annie's ring. She immediately recognized that the ring was extremely valuable because she had the exact same one on her own hand. Seeing Annie, a mere commoner, wearing such an expensive piece of jewelry made the princess furious. Without hesitation, she took Annie's ring off and threw it onto the floor, then stepped on it with her shoe. Despite feeling deeply humiliated, Annie had no choice but to endure it. When it was time to serve the meal, Annie pretended as if nothing had happened and brought lunch to the princess. However, the princess said she didn't want it, she wanted Annie's crew meal instead. Annie was enraged. She knew that the princess was severely allergic to seafood, so she deliberately picked out a large prawn from her noodles and placed it onto the plate before serving it to the princess. The princess took only a few bites before she started coughing violently. Annie wanted to step forward to check on her, but she suddenly noticed that the princess's eyes were turning red due to the allergic reaction, and she was staring at Annie with an intense glare. Shortly after, the plane arrived at its destination, and Annie successfully completed her flight service. But just as she was about to finish work and go home, a shocking news report appeared. The princess had died. Because of her special status, her body needed to be transported to the capital of Thailand within 15 hours. However, before dying, the princess specifically ordered that Annie be the only person allowed to escort her body on the flight, fearing that she might lose her job. Annie had no choice but to board the return flight once again. As a commoner, she had no power to refuse a royal command. The princess's body was placed in the first row seat, but just as the plane took off, it encountered severe turbulence. Under the violent shaking, the princess's corpse suddenly fell onto the floor, and in the very next second, the body started moving toward Annie. In a moment of panic, Annie quickly unbuckled her seatbelt and hid in the corner. She stayed there for a long time before cautiously stepping forward to lift the princess's body back up. But at that moment, something unexpected happened.